Children's Services called me at work and said there was a report about unsafe behavior around my 8-year-old son, an incident at school pickup. I hadn't yelled, hadn't touched anyone. Yet my ex texted, "They'll handle it now." And suddenly everyone looked at me like a threat. My name is Daniel. I'm 38 years old and I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I work as an IT systems analyst for a mid-sized healthcare company. Mostly predictable hours, mostly predictable problems. The kind of job where you solve a mess, document it, move on, and try not to take any of it home with you. But the thing about divorce is that it doesn't always stay in the past. Sometimes it follows you into the most ordinary places, your kitchen, your front yard, your child's school parking lot, and turns routine into evidence. My ex-wife Marissa and I have one child together, our son Noah, who was 8 at the time all of this started. He's the kind of kid who asks a million questions, who remembers tiny details you didn't even realize you said, who still reaches for your hand in crowded places even though he's old enough to pretend he doesn't need to. Marissa and I divorced 2 years earlier. No dramatic courtroom screaming, no cheating scandal that everyone heard about. Just a slow, grinding breakdown, 2 people who stopped being a team and started keeping score. We agreed on a shared custody arrangement. Noah was with me every other week from Thursday evening through Monday morning, plus 1 midweek dinner on the off weeks. Holidays alternated. Summer was split. The court paperwork was clear and I followed it like it was a contract at work. I had learned quickly that co-parenting with Marissa required one thing above everything else: consistency. Not because she valued it, but because I needed it to protect Noah from our tension. I kept pick-up and drop-off times exact. I stayed polite in texts. I didn't argue at exchanges. If she tried to bait me, I answered with short, calm sentences and nothing more. That's important because Marissa's version of communication was conflict. Even after the divorce, she acted like our marriage was still happening, like she was still allowed to control the temperature of my life. At first it was small. She'd criticize what Noah wore to her house, as if a slightly mismatched outfit was proof I didn't care. She'd make comments to other parents at school. Nothing blatant, just the kind of sideways remarks that made people look at me a second longer than normal. She'd forget to send Noah's soccer cleats back, then blame me for him not having them at practice. Then it turned into something sharper. She started telling people I was unstable, not in a way that would make anyone call the police immediately, but in the careful way that plants a story in someone's mind. She told a mutual friend I had anger issues. She told one of the moms in Noah's class that I was scary when I don't get my way. She even told Noah's teacher during parent-teacher conferences that she worried about emotional outbursts at my house. I found out because the teacher's tone changed with me. She became formal, distant, like she was watching her words. She started asking more questions than she used to: how Noah was sleeping, what his routine was at my place, whether I had support nearby. At the time I told myself she was just doing her job, but a few weeks later, I got the real sign that Marissa had decided to go beyond gossip. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a conference call, half listening while taking notes, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. It rang again. Then my work chat lit up with a message from my manager asking if I could stay on for a few extra minutes after the call. When the meeting ended, I stepped into my home office hallway and called the number back. A woman answered with the kind of professional calm that doesn't soften anything. "Hello, may I speak with Daniel Hart? This is Daniel. My name is Denise Caldwell. I'm calling from Children's Services. I remember how my throat went tight, how my brain did that fast calculation. Noah is at school. He's fine. He's safe. Nothing happened. So why would Children's Services be calling me?" She continued, still calm. "We received a report regarding your household. I need to schedule a time to speak with you." I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't demand to know who did it, even though I already suspected. I just stood there in the hallway, staring at the wall like it might give me instructions. "What kind of report?" I asked. "I can't discuss details over the phone," she said, "but it involves allegations of unsafe behavior around your child." Unsafe behavior. Those 2 words can take your entire life and smear it in one sentence. I asked what the next steps were. She explained the process. An interview, a home visit, possibly talking to Noah, contacting the school. It was all delivered like a checklist, like a routine. But to me, it felt like a trapdoor had opened under my feet. After I hung up, I sat at the edge of my couch and listened to the quiet in my house, the hum of the fridge, the faint sound of my neighbor's lawnmower outside. It all felt wrong, like the world should have been reacting with me and it wasn't. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Marissa. "Just so you know, I'm done letting you traumatize our child. No hello. No explanation. Just that. My hands went cold. I stared at the message long enough that the screen dimmed. Then I typed back. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. I knew better than to engage emotionally. I finally sent one sentence. What are you talking about? Her reply came fast. Don't play dumb. They'll handle it now. They. Children's Services. CPS. The agency people whisper about as if it's a curse. That was the moment I understood the real problem. This wasn't about Noah's safety. This was about control. About winning. About taking something from me that mattered. Marissa wanted full custody, and in her mind the fastest way to get it wasn't to prove she was better. It was to make me look dangerous. Over the next 24 hours, pieces started sliding into place. One of the dads from school, someone I'd nodded at during pickup for years, stopped me in the parking lot the next morning and asked, too casually, "Everything okay at home?" His eyes didn't meet mine. A neighbor I'd always been friendly with suddenly acted busy when I walked outside. Another parent removed me from a group chat about a class birthday party, claiming it was an accident. Marissa wasn't just filing a report, she was building a narrative. She was spreading it around like smoke, letting people breathe it in until it felt true. By that night, I had done what any calm person does when they're terrified. I started documenting everything. I saved every text. I took screenshots. I wrote down dates and times of exchanges. I pulled up my calendar and highlighted every pickup and drop-off I'd done on time. I dug through my phone for photos from our weekends. Noah making pancakes. Noah building a Lego set. Noah asleep on the couch with a book on his chest. Because once someone labels you a threat, you learn quickly that your good intentions don't count. Only proof does. And while I was doing all of that, I kept thinking about the one place where proof existed, whether anyone wanted it to or not. Noah's school. His elementary school ran like a little controlled system. IDs checked at the door, buzz-in entrance, a pickup line with strict rules. Every parent had to display a tag with the child's name. Late pickups were logged. Early dismissals required signing out at the office. And this mattered more than I realized at the time. There were cameras everywhere. Not hidden, not secret. The kind schools installed to protect kids and staff and cover their liability. At the time, I didn't know what those cameras had captured. I didn't even know there was anything to capture. I only knew that the school was one of the few places in this whole mess that didn't care about Marissa's story or my story. It only cared about what happened. 2 days after the call, Denise Caldwell arrived for the initial home visit. She was polite, firm, and observant in a way that made my skin prickle. She looked at the kitchen counters, the locks on the doors, the medications in my bathroom cabinet. She asked about Noah's bedtime, his meals, his discipline. Then she said, "We will also be speaking with his school." My stomach flipped, but I kept my face neutral. "Of course," I said. "They know me. I'm there for pickup all the time." She wrote something down, then looked at me. The report states there was an incident during school pickup involving aggressive behavior. I felt my eyes widen before I could stop them. During pickup? I've never. She lifted her hand slightly, not to silence me, but to slow me down. "You'll have the opportunity to respond. I'm gathering information." Aggressive behavior during pickup. That was the shape of the accusation. That was the weapon. And suddenly I understood why Marissa had been acting so confident in her texts. She wasn't just claiming I was dangerous in private. She was claiming there was a public incident, something witnesses could verify, something the school could confirm. Except I knew my own routine. I knew my own behavior. I could be stressed, tired, frustrated with life, but I had never once raised my voice at school pickup, never once caused a scene. The school staff would have remembered. So if Marissa was saying there was an incident, then either she was lying completely, or she was counting on confusion, on half-truths, on people remembering a commotion and assuming it was me. That's how these situations work. The person who stays calm looks suspicious to people who crave drama. The person who tells the loudest story becomes the one everyone believes, unless you can bring receipts. That night after Noah fell asleep at my place, I sat at my dining table with my laptop open and my phone beside it. I kept replaying the phrase "an incident during school pickup." I tried to think back over the past month. Was there a day Marissa showed up when it was my turn? Was there a misunderstanding at the sign-out desk? Did someone else cause a scene and she pinned it on me? The more I thought, the more one specific afternoon stood out. One I'd brushed off at the time as Marissa being Marissa. It was the day she insisted I had no right to pick Noah up early for a dentist appointment she claimed she never approved. She had called the school, she'd texted me nonstop, and she'd shown up at pickup time even though it wasn't her day. Back then, I'd told myself, just get Noah, don't react, go home. Now with CPS involved, I realized that afternoon might not have been random at all. It might have been the setup. I kept turning that afternoon over in my mind like a broken piece of glass. Careful where I held it, careful not to pretend it couldn't cut me. It was a Thursday, my day to pick Noah up. I'd scheduled a dentist appointment for him because he'd been complaining about a tooth for a week, and Marissa kept forgetting to call the clinic back. I'd sent her the appointment details in writing, date, time, the dentist name, the office address. I'd even offered to swap weekends if it made her feel more included. Her response had been one sentence: "You don't get to make medical decisions without me." Which was ironic, because she'd made plenty without me when we were married, and even more after. The custody order said we shared legal custody, but it also said we both had to cooperate and not unreasonably withhold consent for routine care. A dentist visit wasn't experimental surgery. It was a filling, maybe an X-ray. But Marissa treated every normal parenting decision like it was an invasion of her territory. So that Thursday, I left work early and drove to Noah's school. The pickup line was already forming: minivans, SUVs, parents staring at their phones, teachers in fluorescent vests guiding traffic like it was an airport runway. I pulled into my usual spot. I had Noah's pickup tag hanging from my mirror. I had the court order saved on my phone, because by then I'd learned to keep it ready the way some people keep pepper spray. Everything was normal. Too normal. Then I saw her. Marissa's car slid into the line behind me, the front bumper almost kissing my rear. Even from the driver's seat, I could tell it was her. Her posture, the way she leaned forward like she was hunting for something. I remember thinking, please don't do this here. Not in front of Noah, not in front of the school. But Marissa didn't do subtle. She did pressure. She did performance. When the line started moving, she stayed close. Too close. At the curb, when the teacher approached to check tags, Marissa leaned out of her window and said something I couldn't hear. The teacher's face tightened, and she glanced toward my car, then toward the school office. That was my first warning that this wasn't just Marissa being difficult. She was preparing a witness. I got out of my car because the line had paused, and I wanted to tell the teacher calmly, privately, that it was my day and there was a dentist appointment. I wasn't storming. I wasn't yelling. I walked like a guy trying very hard to look harmless. Before I could even speak to the teacher, Marissa got out too. And when I say got out, I mean she launched herself out of that car with a kind of sharp energy that made heads turn. She walked around her vehicle and came toward me, fast. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped, loud enough that the teacher took a step back. "You're kidnapping him for some dentist thing I never agreed to." I took a slow breath. "Marissa, we can talk about this." "No, we can talk about it in court," she cut in, voice rising. "You don't get to make decisions and then act like I'm the crazy one for objecting." The teacher, Miss Grant, I later learned, looked between us with that professional stiffness school staff get when they're deciding whether something is a disagreement or a security incident. I kept my hands open, palms visible. I remember doing it on purpose because I knew how things looked from the outside. Man and woman arguing in a school pickup line. If anyone was going to be painted as physically threatening, it would be me. "Marissa," I said, still controlled, "today is my custodial day. I'm taking Noah to the dentist, then to my place. You have the appointment information. It's in the messages." She laughed, an ugly short sound. "You think your little text messages mean anything? You think that's co-parenting?" And then she did the thing she always did when she wanted to win. She dragged the audience in. She turned slightly so her voice projected toward the other cars. "He's always like this," she said. "He acts calm, and then he explodes later. That's what he does." That sentence hit me like a punch, because I realized she wasn't just arguing. She was narrating. She was planting a story in real time. I heard a car door close somewhere behind me. Someone had gotten out to see what was happening. More eyes, more attention. "Mistio." Miss Grant stepped closer. "Ma'am, sir, I need you to lower your voices," she said, trying to stay neutral. "If there's a custody concern, we can call the office." Marissa pointed at me. "He's not allowed to take him. I'm his mother." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't take the bait. "We have a court order," I said. "I can show you." Marissa's eyes narrowed, and for a split second I saw it, her calculation, the way she measured whether the situation was going her way. Then she pivoted, and her voice softened into something syrupy, the way it does when someone's about to claim victimhood. "I don't feel safe," she said, loud enough for Miss Grant to hear clearly. He's intimidating me. Intimidating. Another loaded word, dropped into the air like it would stick on my clothes. I froze, not because I felt guilty, but because I knew how those words worked. Once spoken, they couldn't be unspoken. They became a label, a file, a note, a concern. Miss Grant looked alarmed now. She held her hand up slightly, like a traffic stop. "Sir, please step back." I stepped back immediately. 2 steps, no argument. "Thank you," Miss Grant said. Marissa watched me do it, and her expression flickered, almost disappointment, like she'd wanted me to refuse, wanted me to react, wanted the story to become true. That was when I noticed the school security officer approaching from the building entrance. A tall man in a dark uniform, walking fast but trying not to look fast. Another witness. Another layer of official. And suddenly the entire pickup line wasn't just parents waiting for their kids. It was a stage with school staff, security, and a woman saying she didn't feel safe. I said, "Steady. I'm here for my son. I'm not here to fight." The officer asked both of us to step closer to the curb, away from the flow of cars. He was calm, but his eyes were sharp, scanning my hands, my face. Marissa immediately started talking over me. "He's controlling," she said. "He's manipulative. He's trying to take him without my consent." The officer asked, "Do you have documentation, sir?" "Yes," I said, and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but I kept them low, visible. I opened the custody order PDF and held it out so he could see. He read it quickly. Then he nodded. "Today is your day," he said. Marissa's face hardened. "That doesn't mean he can just..." The officer held up his hand. "Ma'am, the school follows the custody order on file. If you want it changed, you need to go through the court." Marissa looked like she was about to explode. She took a step toward him, too close, and Miss Grant's eyes widened. And here's the part that's hard to explain unless you've lived through someone trying to frame you. Marissa was the one escalating. Marissa was the one closing distance. Marissa was the one raising her voice high enough for cars to hear. But I could already feel the narrative trying to slide onto me anyway, because I was the man standing there while she performed fear. Noah came out a minute later with his backpack bouncing on his shoulders, eyes squinting in the sunlight. He saw us, stopped, and his face changed, confused first, then worried. That was the moment I hated Marissa more than I ever had, not because she was angry at me, but because she was willing to make our child watch. I crouched slightly and called out, "Hey buddy, come here." Marissa snapped, "Noah, stay with me." Noah's head turned between us like a ping-pong ball. He looked at the security officer, then at Miss Grant, then back at me. The officer said, "Noah, your dad is here to pick you up today. Go ahead." Noah hesitated, then walked toward me. Marissa let out a sharp breath like she'd been punched. "You're doing this again," she said, voice trembling now, perfectly tuned for sympathy. "You're taking him away from me." I didn't respond. I didn't gloat. I didn't say "told you so." I just took Noah's hand and walked back to my car. As I buckled Noah in, I heard Marissa behind me, still talking to the staff, talking to whoever would listen. I didn't hear every word, but I heard the tone. She wasn't asking for help. She was building a case. On the drive to the dentist, Noah was quiet for a while. Then he said, in a small voice, "Did I do something wrong?" My chest tightened. "No," I said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups disagree. It's not your job to fix it." He stared out the window. "Mom said you're trying to take me." I gripped the steering wheel a little harder. "I'm not trying to take you," I said. "I'm your dad. I'm trying to take care of you." He didn't answer, but I could tell he was holding on to my words like he was testing whether they felt safe. That day passed. The dentist visit happened. Noah got his filling. We got ice cream after. We played a board game at home. I tried desperately to wash the school scene off the day, but Marissa didn't want the moment to fade. Over the next week, her accusations sharpened. She started sending messages that read like legal statements instead of co-parenting texts. "I will not allow you to intimidate me at the school again. I have witnesses. Noah told me he's afraid of your temper." Then, 2 days later, Children's Services called. And now, standing in my living room with Denise Caldwell, hearing the words "incident during school pickup," I understood exactly what Marissa had done. She had used that day as ammunition. The report, as Denise explained in careful professional terms, claimed that I had behaved aggressively at school pickup, that I had frightened staff, that I had created an unsafe environment. There were also vague claims about my home being unpredictable, about Noah feeling anxious, about emotional instability. Nothing concrete, nothing with dates, except the pickup incident. And that's what scared me the most. Vague accusations are easy to throw, hard to disprove. They don't need facts, they just need doubt. That night I emailed the school principal requesting any documentation related to that day, incident reports, staff notes, anything. I kept the email polite, short, and professional. The next morning I got a response from the school secretary. We can provide attendance and sign out records upon request. Security footage requires district approval. District approval. I stared at that phrase like it was a locked door. I called. I left a voicemail. I followed up with another email. I asked what the process was, how long it would take. I could feel time turning against me. CPS moved on their own schedule, and I couldn't just sit there hoping the truth would float to the surface. Denise scheduled a second interview. She also wanted to speak with Noah privately at school. That nearly broke me, not because I had anything to hide, but because I knew how sensitive kids are to pressure. If Noah thought the right answer was whatever kept adults calm, he might say something that wasn't exactly true just to make it stop. And Marissa knew that too. She was counting on it. So I did what I always did. I stayed steady. I told Noah gently that a lady might ask him some questions about how things are at Dad's house, and that he should just tell the truth, even if it felt awkward. He nodded, but he looked uneasy. Am I in trouble? He asked. No, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. You're not in trouble. None of this is your fault. But inside I was furious, because it felt like Marissa had found the one weapon I couldn't block, using our child as leverage. Meanwhile, the social damage was spreading in quiet ways. Parents at school stopped making small talk. A neighbor who used to wave now looked away. Even my own sister called me and asked carefully, "Is everything okay?" Marissa said, "Something." Marissa wasn't just trying to convince CPS, she was trying to isolate me. Because isolation makes accusations stick. If you can make someone look alone, people assume there's a reason. A week after the CPS call, I got an email from the school district office. Not the principal, not the secretary. District administration. They said, due to an ongoing investigation, they could not release video footage directly to me, but they could release it to authorized parties, including Children's Services, upon formal request. So the footage existed. It was real. It was saved somewhere on a server with a timestamp and a camera angle and an unblinking record of whatever happened in that pickup lane. And for the first time since the CPS call, I felt something other than fear. I felt a thin, sharp line of hope, because Marissa could lie in texts. She could manipulate conversations. She could cry and perform and twist words, but she couldn't argue with a school camera. And the question that kept me awake that night wasn't whether the footage would help me. It was what exactly it would show. Because the more I replayed that afternoon in my mind, the more I realized something else. Marissa hadn't just tried to stop me from taking Noah. She had wanted a scene. And if the camera caught what I remembered, then the real threat might finally have a face. The next week moved in a way I can only describe as official. Everything that used to be normal got turned into forms, appointments, and cautious language. Denise Caldwell scheduled my follow-up interview for Friday at 9 a.m. She told me she'd already requested records from the school and that she planned to speak to Noah at school the day before. I said, please make sure Noah understands he's not in trouble. Denise gave me that neutral nod professionals use when they don't want to promise anything emotional. We speak to children in an age-appropriate way. She said, our goal is to assess safety. Safety. That word again. Like my son was living in a house with exposed wires and broken locks, not a 3-bedroom place where the biggest danger was Noah leaving Lego pieces on the floor. The night before the school interview, I barely slept. I kept imagining Noah sitting in a small office with an unfamiliar adult asking him questions he didn't understand. Kids don't live in legal reality. They live in emotional reality. If you ask a kid, does your dad ever yell? They don't hear we're doing a safety assessment. They hear answer wrong and something bad happens. So in the morning, I drove Noah to school a little earlier than usual. In the parking lot before he got out, I kept it simple. Hey, I said, if someone asks you questions today, just tell the truth. You don't have to protect anyone's feelings, okay? He nodded, but he kept his eyes down. Is Mom mad? The question hit me harder than it should have because it reminded me of something I didn't want to admit. Noah was already managing Marissa's emotions like it was his job. I don't know, I said carefully, but it's not your responsibility. He opened the car door, then paused. Am I still coming to your house tomorrow? Yes, I said, more firmly than I'd meant to. You are. He seemed relieved, like he needed that certainty the way a drowning person needs a handhold. Then he ran toward the building, small legs moving fast, backpack bouncing, disappearing into the crowd of kids. I sat there for a full minute after he went inside. I watched the entrance doors open and close. I watched a staff member hold the door for a student. I watched the world keep moving while my stomach stayed tight. That afternoon I got a text from Marissa. "Hope you're happy. Noah is upset." I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't care, but because I could hear the trap in it. If I asked what happened, she'd paint it as proof. If I apologized, she'd claim guilt. If I said nothing, she'd say I was cold. I waited, then replied with one sentence. "What did he say upset him?" Her response came quick. "He said strangers keep asking him questions about you. He said you're trying to take him away." That made no sense. Noah wouldn't say take him away unless someone planted that phrase. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type, "Stop poisoning him." I wanted to type, "This is your fault." I wanted to type 100 angry things. Instead I wrote, "I'm sorry he's upset. He's not being taken away from anyone." Marissa didn't answer. She didn't need to. She wanted me off balance, and silence does that too. The next day, Denise called me in the afternoon, not to give conclusions, she couldn't, but to tell me the school interview happened and she'd received some preliminary notes. I asked, "Was Noah okay?" "He was nervous," Denise said, "but he answered questions, and—" A pause, a controlled one. "He stated he feels safe with you." I exhaled so hard it felt like my ribs shifted. "Thank you." But Denise wasn't done. "He also stated he doesn't like when his parents argue at school," she said. He described the incident as mom shouting and dad being quiet. Those were his words. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or sick. Relieved that Noah didn't describe me as a monster. Sick that he'd been put in a position where he had to describe either parent to an investigator. Denise continued. "However, the report alleges you were aggressive. We still need to verify with the school." That was the tension point. Noah's words were helpful, but they weren't the kind of proof that ends a case. Kids' statements can be dismissed as confusion, influence, coaching, depending on who's listening. The thing that could cut through everything was still locked behind district procedures, the school pickup video. That Friday morning I walked into the Children's Services building for my follow-up interview. It was exactly what you'd imagine. Muted colors, old chairs, a poster about reporting abuse, another poster about family resources. It didn't feel like a place designed to help. It felt like a place designed to process. Denise sat across from me with a file folder open. She asked about my childhood, my support system, my work schedule, my relationship history, my stress levels. Some questions made sense, others felt like fishing. Then she asked, "Have you ever threatened your ex-wife?" "No." "Have you ever restrained her physically?" "No." "Have the police ever been called to your home for domestic disturbances?" "No." She tapped her pen against the folder, then looked at me. "The report states there is fear of retaliation if custody is not changed." I stared at her. Retaliation. Denise nodded slightly, like she'd expected me to react. "This is what was reported." I forced myself to breathe slowly. "I want to be clear," I said. "I want my son safe. I want stability. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in co-parenting without conflict." Denise wrote something down. What happened during the school pickup incident? Here it was, the moment where a sentence could be twisted. I answered like I was speaking to a camera, because in a way I was. Every word could end up in a report. "My ex arrived on my custodial day and attempted to stop the pickup," I said. She raised her voice. Staff intervened. School security reviewed the custody order. I complied with every instruction. I stepped back when asked. I did not raise my voice, threaten anyone, or make physical contact. Denise asked, "Did your ex make any physical contact with you?" "No." "Did you make physical contact with her?" "No." "Was the child present during the argument?" "He walked out while it was happening," I admitted, hating it. I tried to keep it short. Denise leaned back slightly. "We'll request the footage from the school district." I felt something tighten again. "So you can get it?" "Yes," Denise said, almost matter of fact. "We can request it for investigative purposes." I nodded. "Please do." Then Denise asked one more thing that made me feel like I'd been pushed underwater. "Would you be willing to do a voluntary drug screening?" I blinked. "What?" "It's voluntary," she repeated, her voice calm. "But it's a tool we use sometimes to rule out concerns quickly." Concerns. As if Marissa's accusation had somehow mutated into a suspicion that I was using drugs. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. My life was spreadsheets, school lunches, and updating firewall policies at 2 a.m. I barely drank. But if I refused, Marissa would paint it as guilt. If I accepted, I'd be playing defense in a game I never agreed to. So I said, yes, I'll do it. Denise's pen moved again. Thank you. When I left that building, I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel and stared out at the parking lot. I'd done everything right, stayed calm, cooperated, offered documentation, and still I was being pulled through a system that treated me like a risk until proven otherwise. That's when I called a lawyer. Not because I planned to go nuclear, not because I wanted to destroy Marissa, but because I finally understood something. Calm alone doesn't protect you. Paper protects you. Procedures protect you. Representation protects you. My lawyer's name was Michael Trent. He didn't sound dramatic or outraged when I explained the situation. He sounded tired in the way someone does when they've seen this pattern too many times. She's trying to weaponize the system, he said. It happens. The key is evidence, and you need to stop doing this alone. I'm not trying to fight, I told him. Michael gave a short, dry laugh. She already is. You're just late to the ring. He asked me to forward the custody order, recent messages, the CPS contact info, and anything related to the school incident. I sent everything. Then he said, do not communicate with her verbally, everything in writing, and don't argue in writing either. Short and factual. If she calls, let it go to voicemail. I swallowed. What about the pickup footage? Michael's tone sharpened slightly. That's your best friend. Schools don't care about your feelings. They care about liability. If there was an incident, it's on video. We'll request it properly. For the first time, I felt like I had something solid under my feet, like I wasn't just trying to hold back a flood with my hands. Over the next few days, small things started happening behind the scenes. Denise emailed me requesting permission to speak to Noah's pediatrician and dentist. I signed it. The drug screening came back clean, obviously, and Denise noted it. Then I got an email from Michael. He'd submitted a formal request to the school district for records related to the pickup incident, including the sign-out log, staff-written reports, and any security footage to be released to him as my attorney. The waiting was brutal, because while all of this moved slowly through channels, Marissa kept pushing pressure into my real life. She posted vague Facebook statuses like, some people shouldn't be allowed around children, and I will always protect my son, and people reacted with heart emojis and comments like, stay strong, mama. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. In our small orbit of parents and neighbors, everyone could guess. One afternoon, a mom from Noah's class, someone I'd never had issues with, pulled me aside at pickup and said quietly, I'm sure it's just misunderstandings, but maybe keep things calm. For Noah? I stared at her for a second, trying to process the audacity, as if I'd been the one screaming in the pickup line, as if I hadn't been the one stepping back and keeping my hands open. But I swallowed it. I agree, I said, I want calm. And later, in my car, I realized that was the most dangerous part of all. Not CPS, not court, the social damage. Because people don't wait for evidence. They pick a side that feels emotionally satisfying. And mother protecting child is an easy story to believe. It's clean. It makes them feel moral. Father falsely accused and staying calm is messy. It asks people to admit they might have judged wrong. Most won't. That night, I got another message from Marissa, longer this time. I know you think you can charm your way out of this. You always do. But I'm not letting you control me anymore. Noah deserves peace, and I'm going to make sure he gets it. If you fight me, it will get ugly. It wasn't just an accusation. It was a threat dressed up as righteousness. I forwarded it to Michael and didn't respond. 2 days later, Michael called me in the late afternoon. His tone was different, more focused, less casual. They released the sign-out log, he said, and there's a written note from the school security officer. My heart kicked. What does it say? It documents that you were compliant, Michael said. It documents that your ex was yelling and refused to leave when asked. It also documents that staff felt she was the one escalating. I felt my eyes sting, and I hated that it happened. Not because I'm embarrassed by emotion, but because I was exhausted from holding everything in. What about the footage? I asked. Michael exhaled. They're releasing it, but not to you directly. To me and to Children's Services. So you'll see it? Yes, he said. And Daniel, listen to me carefully. Whatever is on that footage, we're going to use it properly. We're not going to blast it online. We're not going to violate privacy, but we're going to make sure it's considered. I gripped my phone harder. Is it bad? Michael paused. Not long, but long enough. It's clear, he said finally. Clear. That single word lit up my mind like a flare, because clear didn't mean a little messy. It didn't mean he said, she said. It meant a camera had captured something undeniable. And in that moment I realized Marissa had made a mistake. She'd filed a report based on a public incident at a school, one of the few places where everything is recorded, logged, and time-stamped. She'd tried to weaponize a moment she thought she controlled, but she'd forgotten the one thing she couldn't manipulate, an unblinking lens. Michael told me the district would deliver the video file the next morning. He said Children's Services would likely receive it around the same time. Denise would review it, possibly with a supervisor. The school might also file its own internal report if the footage showed behavior that violated their safety policies. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room. Noah was in his room building something out of blocks, humming to himself, unaware of how close his life had come to being yanked into a courtroom tug-of-war. I tried not to hope too hard, because hope can make you reckless. But I couldn't stop one thought from repeating. If the video is clear, then why did Marissa think she could win? Unless she believed the footage would never be seen, or unless she believed everyone would interpret it in her favor no matter what it showed. That night I barely slept again. But this time the feeling was different. It wasn't just dread, it was anticipation, like I was standing outside a locked room and I could hear the truth moving around inside. The next morning I went to work and tried to pretend I could focus. I answered emails. I sat in a meeting about software licensing. I nodded at the right moments, but my eyes kept flicking to my phone like it was going to ring with my future. Around 11:30 a.m., Michael called. "I have it," he said. My mouth went dry. "You watched it?" "Yes," Michael said. "And Denise has it too. I just spoke to her." I stood up from my desk, walked into an empty conference room, and shut the door behind me. "What does it show?" I asked, my voice low. Michael didn't answer immediately, and in that silence I could feel my pulse in my ears. "It shows," he said carefully, "the exact opposite of what she reported." I closed my eyes. Michael continued, "But it's worse than that. Daniel, it doesn't just clear you. It raises questions about her behavior around the school and around Noah." My stomach dropped again, but not from fear this time, more like a grim, cold certainty settling in. "What kind of questions?" I asked. Michael hesitated. "Let me handle the strategy. Just know this, the narrative is about to flip." I opened my eyes and stared at the blank whiteboard on the wall in front of me, as if it might show me the next move. Outside the conference room I could hear office life continuing. Printers, footsteps, muffled voices. Ordinary. Inside, my life was about to collide with a video file that would decide who everyone believed. And even though I hadn't seen a single frame yet, I already knew one thing. Marissa wasn't going to like what the camera remembered. Michael told me he couldn't forward the video to my personal email yet because of how the district released it. Chain of custody, confidentiality, all of that. He said he could show it to me in his office later that day. So I spent the next few hours pretending to work while my brain ran in circles. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that pickup lane again, but the memory kept changing depending on what I feared people might see. Because the ugly truth is this: when you've been accused, you start doubting your own calm. You replay every second and wonder if your face looked angry even when your voice was steady. You wonder if stepping forward to show a document could be framed as approaching aggressively. You wonder if the way you held your phone looked like you were recording someone without consent. You wonder if a stranger watching without context might misread everything. And that's exactly why video matters. It doesn't care about interpretations. It just shows what happened. At 3:30 p.m., I left work early and drove to Michael's office. My hands were sweaty on the steering wheel the entire way. I kept thinking about Noah, how I'd have to pick him up later, how I'd have to smile like everything was fine, how I'd have to keep him from carrying this tension like a backpack. Michael's office was in a plain brick building near downtown. Nothing fancy, but it felt solid, like the kind of place where paperwork turns into decisions. He met me in the lobby and led me into a small conference room. On the table was his laptop, already open. He didn't offer small talk. He didn't ask how I was holding up. He just closed the door, sat down, and turned the laptop slightly toward me. "I'm going to play it once without stopping," he said. "Then we'll talk." I nodded, throat tight. Michael clicked play. The footage was from a fixed camera mounted high on the school building, angled down toward the pickup lane and the curb area. The video had no sound, but it didn't need it. Everything about the scene was readable in body language. There I was, my car at the curb, Noah's pickup tag visible through the windshield. Calm, still, waiting. Then Marissa's car pulled in behind me, too close, almost touching. Even without audio, you could see her posture forward, tense, aggressive. She leaned out of her window toward Miss Grant, her arm moving in sharp gestures. Then I got out of my car. I watched myself walk, not fast, not sudden, toward Miss Grant with my hands low and open. I looked like exactly what I remembered. A man trying to de-escalate in a place that punishes men for existing too loudly. Then Marissa got out, and on camera it looked even worse than it had in my head. She didn't walk toward me like someone seeking a solution. She marched. Her shoulders were high, chin forward, arms cutting through the air as she spoke. She stepped into my space quickly. I saw myself step back. Immediately, 2 full steps, creating distance. Then Miss Grant held her hand up toward me, telling me to step back, and I did, again. No hesitation. Then the security officer approached from the school doors. The officer's body language was controlled but alert. The moment he arrived, Marissa turned to him and started gesturing wildly toward me. What happened next made my stomach twist, even though I already knew it was coming. Marissa moved closer again. Not just closer to me, but closer to the officer, waving her arms, stepping into his path as he tried to maintain space. Miss Grant moved slightly in front of me, like she was creating a buffer, and I stayed behind her line. I didn't try to push past. I didn't point. I didn't lunge. I just stood there with my palms still visible. Then Noah appeared, walking out of the building. Even without sound, I could see the exact moment he noticed the tension. His steps slowed, his head tilted, his shoulders dropped a little, like a kid bracing for weather. And then this was the part Michael had warned me about. The video showed Marissa shifting her attention. She didn't rush to Noah to comfort him. She didn't crouch down. She didn't lower her posture. She didn't do the soft parent thing. She did something else. She stepped between Noah and me. And in that motion, it was obvious she wasn't protecting Noah from me. She was controlling access. Noah hesitated. The officer spoke to him again. No sound, but the officer's hand motion was clear, a directive, calm, guiding Noah toward me. Noah walked around Marissa and came to me. Marissa's reaction wasn't sadness or fear. It was anger. She threw her arms out as if demanding the world stop. She turned back toward the officer and Miss Grant and kept arguing. Then the moment came that made my blood go cold. As I walked back toward my car with Noah, Marissa followed a few steps behind, still gesturing, still agitated. She didn't touch me, but she got close enough that if I had turned too quickly, it could have been framed as contact. It was the kind of closeness that feels intentional when you see it from above. And then, clear as daylight, Marissa slapped the roof of my car with her palm. Not hard enough to dent anything. Hard enough to be seen. Hard enough to look like a threat. I felt my jaw clench as I watched it. I remembered hearing a noise that day but not realizing what it was. On camera, there was no question. Then, while I was buckling Noah into the back seat, Marissa leaned toward my window, arms moving, posture aggressive. The security officer stepped closer, positioning himself between Marissa and my door, guiding her back. The final seconds showed Marissa still refusing to back away, still animated, still escalating, until the officer finally pointed toward the school building, a clear move back command. Only then did she retreat, stiff and furious. Michael paused the video and turned the laptop toward himself. I sat there, staring at the frozen frame of the pickup lane, my own car captured from above like a piece on a board. That's what I meant by clear, Michael said quietly. My throat felt scraped raw. So, she said I was aggressive. Michael nodded. And the video shows you doing the opposite. It shows compliance. It shows de-escalation. It shows her escalating repeatedly. I swallowed. And the car slap. Michael's expression hardened. Yes. He clicked into another file and showed me the sign-out log. My name, my ID verification, the pickup time. Then he showed me the security officer's written note, short, professional language documenting the incident and identifying Marissa as the person who refused to follow instructions. No one wrote that to help you, Michael said. They wrote it to protect the school. That makes it credible. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. The relief didn't come out as joy. It came out as heaviness, like my body was finally allowed to stop bracing. So what happens now? I asked. Michael folded his hands. Now we let the system do what it's supposed to do. Denise already reviewed the footage. She's escalating it internally. Escalating it, I repeated. Michael nodded. Not against you. Against the false report and the safety concerns it raises about your ex. There are consequences for filing knowingly false reports, and there are also consequences for disruptive behavior on school grounds. I exhaled. Is CPS going to close the case? Likely, Michael said. But we don't assume. We make it easy for them to close. We keep cooperating. We stay calm. I almost laughed at that, stay calm, like I hadn't been living on calm for weeks. Michael continued, then we address custody. My stomach tightened again. I'm not trying to take Noah away from his mother. Michael didn't argue with me, but he didn't let it slide either. Daniel, I hear you, but you're not talking about vengeance. You're talking about protecting your child from instability. She used CPS as a weapon. She created a scene at school. She involved Noah. We have to consider whether the current arrangement is safe long-term. Safe. Again. This time from my lawyer, not CPS. I looked down at my hands. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we file for a modification, Michael said. Not necessarily full custody, but something that creates boundaries. Court-ordered communication through an app. Exchanges at a neutral location. Restrictions about school confrontations. A clear consequence if she interferes with pickups. That sounded reasonable. It sounded like guardrails, but it also sounded like admitting something I didn't want to admit. That Marissa wasn't just difficult. She was dangerous in a quiet way. Not physically violent in the obvious sense, but willing to detonate a situation and let everyone else breathe in the smoke. Before I left, Michael told me Denise would likely call me within a day or two to update me. He also told me not to contact the school asking for the footage, not to discuss it with other parents, and definitely not to confront Marissa about it directly. She's counting on you reacting, Michael said. Don't give her anything. I promised I wouldn't. Then I drove to the school for pickup, and that was one of the strangest parts of the entire ordeal, walking into the same place where the accusation had been staged, knowing the camera had already judged it. I stayed in my car. I kept my face neutral. I watched the curb, the staff, the other parents. Marissa wasn't there. For a moment I felt an irrational fear that she'd show up again and repeat the performance. But she didn't. Noah came out, climbed into the car, and started talking about a science project like the world hadn't nearly cracked open. On the drive home he asked, "Are you mad at Mom?" I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. His eyes were on me, searching. I chose my words carefully. "I'm not mad at you," I said, "and I'm not going to talk badly about your mom to you. But adults are handling some serious stuff right now." He frowned. "Because of the questions?" "Yes," I said, "but you did nothing wrong." He sat back and stared out the window. After a minute he said, "I don't like when she gets loud." It wasn't an accusation. It was a child stating a fact the way kids do when they think adults might ignore it. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "I know," I said softly. "I don't like it either." That night, after Noah fell asleep, my phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. "I know you're talking to a lawyer. I'm not scared." I stared at the screen. I hadn't told her I hired a lawyer, which meant she'd either guessed, or someone had told her, or she was monitoring something she shouldn't have been monitoring. Then another text came through. "You can't erase what you are." My stomach twisted. It was vague on purpose, designed to make me feel dirty without giving me anything specific to refute. I forwarded both messages to Michael and didn't respond. The next morning, Denise called. Her voice was the same calm tone as always, but something about it had shifted, like the conversation was moving from suspicion to resolution. "Daniel," she said, "I wanted to update you. We reviewed the school footage and the school records. They do not support the allegations made in the report." I closed my eyes. "Thank you," Denise continued. "Based on the evidence we have no safety concerns about your care of Noah. We'll be closing the case as unfounded." Unfounded. It should have felt like victory, but what I felt was quiet exhaustion, like someone had finally stopped pressing a thumb into a bruise. "Okay," I said. "I appreciate you letting me know." Denise hesitated for a fraction of a second, then said, "I can't discuss action regarding the reporter, but I strongly advise you to continue documenting and to pursue legal counsel for custody and boundaries." "I already have," I said. "Good," Denise replied. "One more thing. Noah is doing okay, but he's experiencing stress. If you're able to provide him stability and consider counseling resources, that would be beneficial." "I will," I promised. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and let the silence settle. The case was closing. The accusation had collapsed under evidence. The school footage had done what I couldn't do with words. But the problem wasn't over, because Marissa had already fired the shot. She'd already poisoned the social well. She'd already shown she was willing to risk Noah's peace to win a custody battle. And now she would learn, either from CPS, from the school, or from Michael's filings that the official record didn't just clear me. It painted her behavior in ink. That afternoon, Michael called again. "We're filing the motion," he said, and Marissa requested an emergency hearing. My heart jumped. She did what? Michael's voice stayed steady. "She's attempting to get ahead of the video by claiming you're retaliating. It's a common tactic. But now it's going to be handled in front of a judge with evidence." My mouth went dry. "When?" "Soon," Michael said. "Within a week or two." I stared at my kitchen wall as if I could see the calendar through it. "What happens at that hearing?" "We present the closure letter from CPS," Michael said. "We present the school's documentation, and if needed, we request the judge to review the footage in chambers or accept authenticated stills. We also ask for specific boundaries, exchange protocols, communication limits, and consequences for interference." I tried to breathe. "And what will she do?" Michael paused. "She'll try to provoke you. She'll cry. She'll claim the system failed her. She'll paint you as charming and manipulative, but she can't argue with timestamps." After that call, I went through the rest of my day like I was carrying a glass of water I couldn't spill. Every interaction mattered. Every message mattered. And then that evening, my phone buzzed with a notification. A Facebook post tagged with my name. Marissa had written a long emotional paragraph about narcissists, about how the system protects abusers, about being silenced. She didn't name me directly, but she didn't have to. People in our circle knew. The comments were already filling up. "I'm so sorry. You're such a strong mom. Some men are monsters." I felt my stomach turn as I read it. Not because I cared what strangers thought, but because I knew Noah would eventually be old enough to see it. And because I knew silence looks like guilt to people who love drama. I wanted to respond. I wanted to post the truth. I wanted to scream, "There's video. There's proof. You lied." Instead, I did what Michael had told me to do. I took screenshots. I documented. I stayed quiet. Because the truth was no longer a debate. It was a file. And soon, very soon, Marissa was going to have to face what the camera had captured, not in a comment section, but in a room where performance doesn't beat evidence. A room where she couldn't talk over the facts. And the hardest part was knowing Noah would be caught in the middle of whatever came next, whether I liked it or not. The week leading up to the hearing felt like living in a house with the smoke alarm stuck on. Nothing was actively burning, but my nervous system didn't believe that. Michael prepared everything like it was a work project. Organized, labeled, time-stamped. CPS closure letter, custody order, the school sign-out logs, the security officer's written note, screenshots of Marissa's posts and texts, a short declaration from me that read like a calm timeline, not an emotional plea. And in the middle of it all was the thing that couldn't be argued with, the school pickup video, preserved and authenticated through the district. Marissa kept posting. She kept messaging. She kept circling the same theme, that she was being silenced, that she was protecting her child, that I was dangerous behind closed doors. I didn't respond. That silence cost me socially in the short term. A couple parents stopped letting their kids come to Noah's playdates. Someone I'd known for years unfriended me. Even one of my coworkers who lived in the same area asked me in a stiff tone if everything was under control. But the silence also protected me legally. Michael said it over and over. A courtroom doesn't care who wins a Facebook argument. The day before the hearing, I picked Noah up from school and noticed something small but telling. The security officer, the same one from the incident, was standing closer to the pickup lane than usual. Not because of me, because of the possibility of Marissa showing up again. That wasn't paranoia. That was a school adjusting to a known risk. Noah climbed into the car, and as I pulled away, he said, "Mom told me you're trying to get her in trouble." I kept my eyes on the road. "Mom and I are dealing with adult stuff," I said. "It's not about getting anyone in trouble. It's about keeping things calm and safe for you." He was quiet for a few seconds, then asked, "Am I going to have to talk to more people?" The question tightened my chest. "I don't think so," I said. "And if you do, you just tell the truth like you did before." He nodded slowly, like he was trying to memorize the rules of a game he never asked to play. That night, after Noah went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone. I had a drafted message to Marissa that I never sent. It wasn't mean, it wasn't threatening. It was just the truth, that her report had been closed, that the school video existed, that her public posts were hurting Noah. I deleted it, because the truth didn't need my thumbs. It needed a judge. The hearing was on a Wednesday morning. Michael met me outside the courthouse, briefcase in hand, looking like he'd already been awake for hours. "Remember," he said as we walked in, Don't react to her. Let her talk. Let her perform. We stay factual. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not dramatic like TV, just wood benches, fluorescent lighting, a judge's desk, and people waiting their turn like it was a DMV with higher stakes. Marissa was already there with her attorney. She wore a soft sweater and minimal makeup, hair pulled back neatly. She looked like the version of herself she showed strangers, controlled, concerned, almost fragile. When she saw me, she didn't glare, she didn't smirk. She looked right through me, like I was furniture. Then, as if on cue, she leaned toward her attorney and whispered something while glancing in my direction. Her mouth trembled slightly. The performance started before the judge even entered. When our case was called, we stepped forward. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses and a face that didn't give away sympathy easily, looked down at the paperwork and asked the basics. Names, custody arrangement, reason for the emergency request. Marissa's attorney spoke first. He claimed Marissa had serious concerns about Noah's emotional safety, that there had been disturbing behavior at a school pickup, and that Marissa feared Noah was being manipulated and alienated. Then Marissa spoke. She didn't accuse me with rage. She accused me with sadness. She said she felt intimidated. She said she feared retaliation. She said Noah came home anxious after my weekends. She said the system doesn't always protect children until it's too late. She never once mentioned filing the CPS report directly. She didn't have to. The implication hung in the air. The judge listened without interrupting, eyes steady. Then she turned to Michael. "Counsel?" the judge asked. Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't act outraged. He spoke like a man presenting evidence, not an opinion. "Your Honor," he said, "we have documentation that Children's Services investigated these allegations and closed the case as unfounded. We also have school records, sign-out logs, and a written incident note from the school's security officer indicating Mr. Hart was compliant, and the disruption was caused by Miss Hart. Additionally, there is video footage from the school's security camera from that day." Marissa's attorney stiffened. Marissa's eyes flickered once. Fast. The judge's gaze sharpened slightly. "Video footage?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael said. "We have it available for review." The judge glanced at Marissa's attorney. "Counsel, were you aware of video footage existing?" Marissa's attorney hesitated just long enough to answer honestly without saying too much. "We were not provided any footage." The judge looked at Marissa. "Miss Hart, were you aware the school has cameras in the pickup area?" Marissa's mouth opened, then closed. I assumed they did," she said. The judge nodded once, then addressed both attorneys. "I will review the footage. They didn't play it on a big screen for everyone like some public spectacle." The judge reviewed it in a controlled way, with the clerk in the attorney's position to confirm what was being shown. But even from where I stood, I could see Marissa's posture change as the judge watched. It was subtle, but I recognized it. That tightening around the shoulders, that stillness. It was the body language of someone realizing the story is no longer theirs to tell. After a few minutes, the judge looked up and removed her glasses. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was disappointed. "Miss Hart," she said, "the footage does not support what you've alleged here today." Marissa's face went pale. "Your Honor, the judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. The footage shows you escalating the confrontation, approaching Mr. Hart repeatedly after staff directed you to step back, and behaving in a way that disrupted school operations. Mr. Hart appears compliant. If there was intimidation, it is not reflected in the footage." Marissa's attorney tried to recover, shifting toward a different argument about overall concerns, but the judge's tone stayed firm. "Emergency requests are not tools for strategic advantage," she said. "They are for immediate safety concerns. I do not find an immediate safety concern with the child being in Mr. Hart's care." Then the judge did something that, for me, felt like the first true moment of justice. She set boundaries. She ordered that communication between Marissa and me go through a court-approved co-parenting app. No more emotional texting. No more vague threats. Everything logged, time-stamped, readable by the court if needed. She ordered that exchanges occur at a neutral location for a period of time, not at each other's homes. Less opportunity for confrontation. She ordered that neither parent could interfere with school pickups on the other parent's custodial day. If there was a dispute, it had to be handled through counsel or through the court, not in a school parking lot. And then she looked at Marissa and said, "If you file another report of abuse or neglect, you better be able to substantiate it. False or malicious reporting can have serious consequences." Marissa's eyes filled with tears right on schedule, but the judge didn't soften. Not because she hated Marissa, but because she'd seen what this was, a weapon disguised as concern. When the hearing ended, Marissa walked out quickly, her attorney trailing behind. She didn't look at me once. I stood there for a moment, not moving, while Michael gathered his papers. "That went as well as it could," he said quietly. I nodded. My legs felt heavy, like my body hadn't realized it was allowed to relax yet. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Not lighter exactly, just clearer, like I'd been underwater and finally surfaced. But the next part of justice wasn't in that courtroom. It was in the ripples. A few days later, the school called me. The principal, Dr. Kenley, asked if I could come in for a brief meeting. My stomach tightened automatically, even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong. Michael told me it was okay, and if anything felt off, I could ask to reschedule with counsel present. But I went. Dr. Kenley sat with me and the school's security officer, and they were direct. "We're aware there was an attempt to involve the school in a custody conflict," Dr. Kenley said. "We've reviewed our policies and want to be clear. We will follow court orders, and we will not allow confrontations on campus." The security officer added, "If Miss Hart shows up again and causes a scene, we will treat it as a safety issue." Hearing that didn't make me feel triumphant. It made me feel sad because it confirmed what the video already showed, that Marissa was now seen by the school as a risk factor. Before I left, Dr. Kenley said something that stuck with me. "Mr. Hart, we also want you to know that your composure that day mattered. You did the right thing by stepping back and letting staff handle it." I thanked her and I meant it, but it hit me with an odd kind of grief. Because doing the right thing shouldn't have to be proven with a security camera. It should just be recognized. Over the next couple weeks, the social fog started to shift. It didn't happen with a dramatic apology from everyone who judged me. People rarely do that. Most prefer to act like they never believed the lie in the first place. But I noticed small changes. One of the dads at pickup struck up a conversation again, awkward but trying. A mom who'd avoided me asked if Noah could come to her kid's birthday party after all. My neighbor waved like nothing had happened. And then there was my sister. She came over one evening after Noah went to bed. She sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd been living in fear weeks earlier. And she said quietly, "I'm sorry I doubted you." I didn't rub it in. I didn't demand an explanation. I just said, "I get why it happened." Because I did. People want simple stories. They want a hero and a villain, a victim and a threat. Marissa offered them a neat narrative, and I offered them silence. In the absence of evidence, they filled the space with assumptions. But evidence arrived, and the assumptions had to move. Marissa didn't disappear after the hearing. She didn't suddenly become a peaceful co-parent. But something changed. She lost the ability to control the story. The co-parenting app forced her to write like a responsible adult, because every message was a potential exhibit. When she tried to bait me, I responded with facts. When she tried to argue, I didn't. When she tried to accidentally show up at an exchange, the neutral location had staff and cameras, and she knew it. The chaos had less room to breathe. Noah, slowly, started to breathe too. One night a couple months later, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie. He leaned against my shoulder the way he used to when he was smaller, and he said, almost casually, "Mom doesn't get loud at school anymore." I swallowed. "That's good," I said. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I like it better when everyone is normal." That sentence broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Because kids shouldn't have to crave normal like it's a luxury. After everything settled into the new structure, I asked Michael if there would be consequences for the CPS report itself. He was honest. "Sometimes there are," he said. "Sometimes there aren't. Agencies don't always punish false reporters the way people think. But here's what you got that matters. The case is closed as unfounded. The court saw the evidence, and there are orders in place. That's real protection." And he was right. The justice in my story wasn't Marissa going to jail or being publicly humiliated in some cinematic way. The justice was quieter but stronger. A false label didn't stick. A system that could have swallowed me spit the truth back out when it saw proof. And a child got a little more peace because adults were finally forced to behave like adults. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not trust the system. The system is imperfect. It can be slow, and it can be frightening, and it can treat you like a problem until you prove otherwise. The lesson is this: when someone tries to destroy you with a story, don't fight with your own story. Fight with evidence. Stay calm, not because you're weak, but because calm keeps you accurate. Calm keeps you consistent. Calm keeps you from giving your opponent the reaction they're counting on. Document everything. Save the messages. Follow the order. Cooperate with professionals. Get legal help sooner than you think you need it. And if there's a camera anywhere near the conflict, school, exchange location, building lobby, understand that it might be the only witness that isn't loyal to either side. Most of all, protect your child's emotional safety the same way you'd protect their physical safety. Because the real threat isn't always the person who looks scary in someone else's story. Sometimes the real threat is the person willing to weaponize institutions, reputations, and a child's sense of security just to win. And sometimes, the thing that saves you isn't a dramatic speech. It's a simple silent video that shows who stepped back and who couldn't.